And I do not think this will unsettle him. He will keep going. But even if he's fine mentally, you have to win a game now against Alireza, who's confident, fast, well prepared, plays the Berlin Wall. The Berlin in Paris. This is amazing.
The Berlin in Paris.
We had the London in Paris. Now we have the Berlin Paris. What other chess openings are named after cities?
Oh, so many, Jan. We saw the Carlsbad the other day. That's more of a structure, less of an opening.
That's more of a village.
Oh, it's a village, really?
Carlsbad, yeah, that's small. Any
what
big
other
cities?
Cities come to mind?
I got
Budapest?
nothing.
No. Budapest Gambit?
Budapest, yeah, that's that's in there.
Budapest Gambit.
But this is the Berlin, and Hans Niemann is going for the end game. This end game got popularized in the year 2000 when Vladimir Kramnik used it to neutralize the GOAT at that time, at the very least, Garry Kasparov, in their World Championship match. He played the strange line, leaving his king in the center, accepting double pawns. But he didn't lose a single game to Garry Kasparov. The world took notice, and top players have been using this setup ever since Alireza.
And here we are 26 years later, where this opening is still very much present.
Wow, so you were not born during the Kasparov-Kramnik match?
I was not born. I did not even see it
that's
live.
Sick.
Yeah.
I was already cynical back then. Knight to d5, bishop to d2. There are many possible setups to choose, but basically it comes down to white wants to use his kingside majority. That's why he played the strange move with the knight sitting there close to the king, because he wants to clear the way for the f-pawn. Here there are no queens, so you don't even have to be too worried about exposing your king. You want to push these pawns up the board using the fact that that majority is, what do you call this, mobile. They can create a passer, they can create some trouble, while black can't do that because of his double pawn.
We saw this earlier in another match a few days ago. I want to say...
Let's see if you remember.
Jan Krzysztof Duda against Sina Movahed?
No, it was against Benjamin Bock.
Oh, of course. He had placed this very nice knight on this f6 square, and those 4 against 3, we've seen this before. These 4 pawns on that right flank of the board can be very demanding.
And I like, because nowadays most openings are fine for black if you check with a computer, if you have time to think it through. So in classical chess, very often you see white not going for this because they feel it's too easy for black to defend. But I feel in Rapid, and Duda said something similar, it is easier for white because he has a more clear-cut plan to execute. So I like these top players going for these setups in Rapid, and especially here Hans in a must-win situation. At least he gets some imbalance. So I don't think this is a stupid choice, even though the ending has a reputation of being drawish or equal. I don't think that's true. I think it's very rich strategically, and I like what Hans chose here.
The question is, will Alireza and his black pieces will make available for his bishop pair to illuminate this board?
That is the question indeed. I didn't get the question. But Hans Niemann, I think he has a business called Endgame AI. He likes endgames.
Oh, do you think that's why he went for this?
Not sure if it's purely promotional. I think he's also good at endgames. He enjoys the queens being off, you know, then the little subtle nuances of shuffling your pieces around. Pushes the f-pawn up the board. Computer saying black is fine. I still like white's chances, you know, looks easier to play.
Yes, it seems that Hans' 3 pawns are out and about, already taking that space.
Pawn to f5, fighting back. Nice idea. Before white grabs more space, Alireza saying not so fast.
Very provocative strategic move.
I like it. I like it. He has to stop these pawns from running up the board. Create some scope for his bishops. He allows en passant. E5 takes f6 is a legal move here. But that's not the end of the world. He can even recapture with a pawn. Then put his rook on j8. No, this is an excellent decision. And I didn't think of it. I might have to retract what I just said. I think black is fine now. Very good move.
You think you need some brushing up on your positional chess?
I have to study my en passant rules. They're so confusing. Like you put a pawn there, next to pawn, then it captures him. It's never been intuitive to me. But now black is fine. E takes f6, g takes f6. And if you take the other pawn, g takes f5, then the bishop takes, also stopping that f-pawn.
And suddenly that white king will have some problems in said position.
Exactly. Excellent move. And Alireza showing his class here. Hans takes, goes f5. He had to limit that light square bishop a little bit. But I feel like black has enough targets now. He can move his king out of the way, bring the rook to e8. These pawns aren't going anywhere. The other rook can go to g8. This looks comfy. So good.
Alireza brings out his bishop.
He's teasing a bit. He's saying, you know what? Please take my bishop, because then we will have the so-called opposite colored bishops, which have a strong drawing tendency. And if you lead in the match, you don't mind. Draw a little position. Very solid move. Even though I think there might have been more for him to work with, keeping the bishops on the board.
He also undoubles his pawns, fixing his pawn structure, and now Alireza gets rid of a lot of his problems.
Yeah. King can step out of the way. The other rook will join the action. Doesn't look like he's in trouble, but he might also not be better anymore, which he used to be earlier. Well, now I don't see how black could fight for an advantage. Hans is stabilizing. And this bishop on, what's the square? d7, the black light squared bishop. It's a little restricted by the white pawns. How do we activate it?
Yeah, it is indeed. Would you consider playing something like c5, bishop c6, so the bishop can meet that long diagonal?
I think you gotta eventually. Question is the timing. He first brings the king out of the way. Then he wants the rook to enter the game, come to the open file or to the g file. Then we have to work on that bishop.
I see the black pieces even playing for an advantage from this position. That open H line looks like it favors those black rooks.
Hey, I'm not sure. I feel like white is fine now. This check is a little annoying. Forcing the king to the side. Maybe we could use our rooks to challenge that H file, even rook d3, rook h3. I'm not sure how you do it. Alireza's been playing very fast.
How about that centralized knight there on d5? An absolute monster of a piece that cannot even be touched right now in this position.
That is true. Once again, your Alireza bias is shining through your commentary. I get it. You guys are friends.
I actually liked Hans' position more coming into this endgame with those 4v3s, but I think he spoiled his pawn majority on that right flank of the board.
Still there, 2 versus 1, but no. I'm with you, I do believe. Black should be alright. But Hans, he likes these dry positions. Brings the bishop back now. After he forced the king a little further away from the center.
Oh, does the white bishop want to reroute to the square g3 and attack this newly created weakness on d6?
Not just attack, but also defend the horsey on h2, covering up the h-file, so it's a multi-purpose square.
Beautiful maneuvering by the white pieces.
Very nice. Question is, does Alireza have to react? He can just bring his rook, then if the bishop goes to its target square, king goes back, covers the pawn. Doesn't look like there's too much happening. But Alireza sometimes, even if his position is solid, if there's not enough happening, he can get a little impatient. He wants to do something active. And if that's the case here, it's going to be dangerous against Hans. Because this position, I think, is asking you for patience, little maneuvering, don't allow anything. That's historically not been Alireza's cup of tea. He's more of a dynamic guy.
However, Hans must watch out. He's taken minute turns in the past 5 turns, so he must watch his clock a little bit as he plays really fast these last 2 moves.
Yeah, he had to catch up a bit. There's the bishop on its destination square, threatening to eat that pawn. So the king should sidestep, cover it.
That will create a long-term absolute pin on that pawn, which could be targeted in a further section of this game.
Very much so. And Alireza thinking here, he's looking to be the second Falcon in the semifinals because his teammate, Hikaru Nakamura, won his Armageddon against Arjun Erigaisi. So just like last year, where the Falcons finished 2nd and 3rd, they're going strong, securing more points for that powerhouse, and they will need it because Dan Slazovic for AJAL is in the semifinals as well.
Absolutely, as we see.
Look at this, the engine bar crawling up there. It's saying Hans with a chance now. Alireza decided to exchange a pair of rooks before covering the pawn. And I'm not sure why it's so dangerous for black. But now, white apparently has some chances. Maybe just bring the knight back, knight to f3, knight to d4. You could also think about knight to f1 and knight to e3. This is pressure, especially this knight f1, knight e3, debunking that strong knight on d5.
Absolutely.
How do you even hang on to the pawn? He's got knight f3, also looked very natural. But maybe challenging the black knight was even stronger.
Yes, this knight f1, knight e3 plan you mentioned was the way to go here, putting further pressure on that deep weakness on d6.
Rook to d4. Hans Niemann showing his endgame prowess here, making some progress against Alireza Firouzja. But like I said, this waiting passively, defending, it's not his cup of tea. Now pawn to c4 is a threat. To destabilize that knight, maybe black has to go pawn to b4 to stop that.
Ooh, I love this move, fixing that white pawn structure on the left flank of the board.
He's still in trouble. Knight to d2, threatening knight e4, knight c4. You can see a tiny head shake there from Alireza. Hans is leaning back in his chair like terror squad. And I think he's a big favorite to win this now.
All of a sudden, Hans has shown absolute class in putting some pressure on those weak points. And look at that d6 pawn. Such a liability.
You know where I think it all went wrong was when Alireza played this move bishop to d6, allowing Hans to take it and then stabilize. Because Alireza was better there. If he keeps his two bishops, starts attacking. But maybe the 1-0 lead got into his head. He thought, I have to play solid. Not only was it the wrong decision chess-wise, it's also wrong decision for him stylistically. It's not how he plays. Now he's suffering badly.
Hans has a chance here to equalize this game 2 out of 4.
Nothing direct, but the black pieces are very passive, having to cover that d6 pawn. So maybe you can activate your rook, which has done its job, bring it back to d1, and try to sneak over to that h-file. And if the rook would end up on h7 or even h6, black defenses might collapse. I don't see how you hold this.
Hans, who needs to find this plan in order to grasp the advantage here.
And he will.
I think it's within his grasp. Absolutely.
Very much so. He's maximizes other pieces. The knight is perfect. The bishop is perfect. That rook could handle a little more responsibility. And now, just as we said, he's offering the knight exchange. That's a surprise. So if takes and pawn to c5. Do you think he can win even without the knights? I am shocked by this decision. His knight was so pretty.
So powerful on c4. All he had to do was bring his rook down, bring his rook to the other side of the board, reach that h6 or h7 square, and suddenly the black pieces have to defend so many weaknesses at once. It's too much to handle.
Yeah, because they were all stuck defending this d6 pawn. Knight e3 still has pressure because there's more targets for him. Pawn on f6, pawn on d6, pawn on b4. But I am not sure this is maximizing his chances. Alireza doesn't look happy though.
As more non-bishops are traded off this board, this position gets equal and equal, as those bishops are opposite-colored bishops, which is notorious for having some drawn patterns.
Yeah, especially if no other pieces are left. If there are some rooks on the board, then the attacker sometimes has an advantage, and Alireza Firouzja shaking his head. He's still very unhappy about the state of things.
However, you cannot trade immediately on e3 because
why is that?
You're left with a glaring weakness on this f6 pawn that you really can't defend easily.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. Maybe he has to go pawn to a5, let Hans do the trading. It's still unpleasant. Yeah, he plays pawn to a5. White could even change his mind, return to c4, say thank you for the new target, and then back to rook reshuffling. Now he takes Hans,
Bishop
very clean
h4.
chess style, like his idol Robert James Fischer, who would play these very clean games, not always like fancy, but progressing, saying, you know what, I don't need more pieces on the board. I spotted this weakness, now I will bring my king to f4, then maybe go g5, create a passer. I'm not sure if it's enough to win, but Hans looks like he knows what he's doing here.
Bishop folds all the way to the corner there. What is that move's purpose?
I think he wants to prepare pawn to c5 without that bishop being attacked by the rook. Not so much he could do. He's looking for counterplay.
Pawn to
still
c5
believe-
or pawn to d5 with bishop coming back to e4 and then king to d6.
Also possible, yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. Pawn to d5 and the bishop gets an outpost on e4. Very possible. And rook to d2. Abandoning that e4 square. There,
Bishop
the
back to
occupies
e4
it.
and
There
it's
comes pawn to
defended by this
d5.
pawn.
He did your plan. Not only do you guys look alike, you also think alike. That's amazing.
The question
Rook to
remains, how do you
h2?
attack this weak pawn on f6 now?
You have to get the bishop out of the way, bring the rook in, and then bring the bishop back. But Firouzja is looking for counterplay, advancing his own pawns. Because he no longer has double pawns. He has a working majority on that queen side now. They are marching.
This majority can become dangerous if Hans brings all his pieces too far and lets that swing.
First, he should probably activate his king. Yeah, there comes the king. Support these guys. Kings are weird pieces. They're supposed to be hidden for most of the game, but then when there are few pieces left, they have to go do stuff.
And now
Support
we have
the
a
pawns here.
mistake. Pawn to c3, trying to get rid of his weakness of that c2
This has
pawn.
gone wrong. Typically, you don't want to play on the side where you're weaker, and he has to exchange off that weakness. But now Alireza has so much counterplay. Well, nothing happened to that f6 pawn. Alireza Firouzja very much back in the game.
We might see a breakthrough from these pawns on the left flank of the board here as Alireza tries to create some persistent counterplay to distract Hans's pieces.
Now, this looks absolutely fine for black. You can either simplify or you can go after these pawns as Alireza does. Bishop to b1. The white rook has to go back, cover his own pawn, go passive. But now black can target again as he does with the rook to the corner. If anybody's better, it's Alireza now. And let's not forget, he would be fine with the draw, but he'll be even more fine with the win, taking a 2-0 lead.
I love this idea by Hans. Rook to b2, forcing the bishop to take that pawn. And now the bishop feels a bit trapped.
Another Fischer theme. There is this very famous game, Spassky against Fischer, where that bishop got trapped on the opposite side of the board, but same square. However, is Alireza in time here to go pawn to d4, rook to a3, bishop takes b3? Or is he not? No, he goes c4, saying, you know what, I don't want to push my luck. I'm okay simplifying. But now it's once again black that has to be careful. Also lower on time, Alireza. What a comeback by Hans.
Comeback by Hans as...
But Alireza's forcing the rooks off. You cannot keep the rooks. Rook to b1, bishop to d3.
Ooh.
And without the rooks, a player of Alireza's caliber can make 8,000 moves in such a position. This is a draw. Whenever the white pawn advances to the f7 square, it will get captured. I don't think Hans is even going to try.
He is trying, though. Maybe is he trying to flag him?
But he's
Alireza's
just waiting.
43
He's going to wait for
seconds.
30 moves, then he's going to go f7. Hope Alireza has pre-moved something else, but it's not happening now. There comes f7 and a draw. Both sides missing some chances.
We have applause from the audiences there.
Rightly so. Big
Alireza
struggle.
keeps his lead in this match. 1.5 to 0.5.
That means if he wins the next game, he is through to the semifinals. But that can be tricky. As the white pieces, do you play for a win, or do you think, like, you know what, with a draw, I'm still up 2-1, I'm not likely to lose. I've seen these situations where people hesitate a bit instead of going for the win and allowing the opponent to come back.